Hello and welcome. You're watching the News Unlocked. Usually on this show, we take you behind the headlines to the stories that matter, the issues that get lost in the noise of news. Today, we devote the next half hour to a very special person, the legendary Bengali cinema and Indian cinema actor Soumitra Chatterjee, who breathed his last hospital in Kolkata, leading to an outpouring of emotion. For 40 days, Chatterjee had been in hospital about the life and times of Soumitra Chatterjee. But we will also be paying a tribute to the life and times of this great actor, Soumitra Chatterjee. Let's first go then to Sharmila Tagore, who was Soumitra Chatterjee's co-star in his very first film, Apuor Sansar, in 1959. I'm also joined by Aparna Sen. But to you, Sharmila Tagore first. Any memories that you have of that first encounter when you first met Soumitra Chatterjee way back 1959 during the making of that legendary film Apuor Sansar?
Well, I was 13 and he was 23, and I was the baby of the set. So the director became Manikda, the DOP became Shubroto Kaku, the sound recordings became Durgada, but Soumitra was always Soumitra. He became my friend. And there are lots of memories, and particularly when I had to, in the Tonga scene when I was coming back from seeing a film, and we are chatting. It was a very intimate, and he puts a cigarette in his mouth, and I have to light a match and light his cigarette, and I just couldn't do it. And there was, because I thought that, the whole matchbox will explode or something. Anyway, so there was Soumitra, after about 7 takes, which we could ill afford, Soumitra thought of a way out. He said, why can't somebody light the match and matchstick and give it in her hand, and she can then bring it into the frame and light my cigarette. And that's what happened. And that's one of the iconic scenes in the film. So, well, I've known him for 60 years, and he was a dearest man I knew.
You're speaking about iconic scenes in Apuor Sansar, and there is the other scene where the two of you are watching a movie and you're sort of completely caught up in the movie, and there he is next to you with a sort of frigid smile looking at you. You remember that scene?
Yes. Yeah. Copious tears, and he first starts smiling, like giggling, and then he realized that I'm so involved, and how supportive he is. He kind of understands her emotions. So that was a wonderful film, and trilogy remains the romance of Apuor Sansar. 60 years later, enchants another generation, a new generation. So it's had such a long shelf life, and I think it'll continue to live forever. And Apu and Aparna, after the release of the film, became so popular. I mean, you can't without Aparna, and you can't think Aparna without Apu. So it's in people's collective conscience, really. All Bengalis who loved Ray, I think most did, and most loved Soumitra. It's an all-time favorite.
What stood out for you about him as an actor? Because he was always seen, unlike let's say an Uttam Kumar who was the star, Soumitra was seen as the actor star, someone who could effortlessly bridge that divide between art and commerce without even trying to.
I think he privileged art over commerce, and he was not one of those people who were looking at money. Of course, money, we all of us need money, but he was a very trusting, simple person, full of joy. He was a wonderful person to be with. I mean, his energy was something else. And as an actor, I mean, look at the body of work he has given you. From, of course, the Ray films, they're each one of them different. I mean, he plays a priest, a poor priest in the backdrop of the Bengal famine. Then he is a nationalist in Ghare Baire. Then he opposes patriarchy and blind superstition in Devi. I mean, there is many characters that he's played. Only Feluda, of course, and Joy Baba Felunath and all that. I mean, which is, the Bengalis love him as Feluda. So, I mean, he's given all that, but beyond that, he's worked with Mrinal Sen, he's worked with Tapan Sinha, he's worked with Ritu Porno, he's given, and many others. I mean, Koni, I remember being in the jury. I was a member of the jury when his film came from Bengal for national selection, and he was shortlisted for the Best Actor award, and I just loved his performance, and then 2-3 other members. We really tried, but that year Nasiruddin got it for Par, directed by Gautam Ghosh, who was also a wonderful film. But his performance in Koni as a swimming coach is so wonderful, so good.
I'll come to you in a moment, ma'am, but let's go to Aparna Sen. Again, someone who's worked intimately with Soumitra Chatterjee over the years. Aparna Sen, your favorite memory of Soumitra Chatterjee. What stands out to you of him as an actor and as a person?
Well, to start with, I would say that, as a person, he was liberal, he was a humanist, and he was fearless. He was part of the infamous 49 who wrote that open letter to the PM, and he agreed instantly without any second thoughts, where much younger people were afraid. That was one of the things about him. Secondly, he was very much a Renaissance man, in the sense that, he had a very holistic view towards life. He didn't only act in films, and he acted in mainstream films like all of us have to, who pursue a film career. But the thing is that he did so many other things. He had so many other poetry. He wrote plays. He directed plays. He did sketches for his plays. He drew. He painted. There was a lot that he did. He was an elocutionist. I've done so many recitations along with him. He was the ultimate humanist.
You call him a Renaissance man. In many ways, as you said, multifaceted personality. Was he also an actor-activist, in a sense? Someone who saw acting as a platform to spread his sort of thoughts, views, ideology?
Yes, well, I wouldn't say activist, but he was definitely very aware of and, keenly aware of what was happening around him. And when he had to protest, he did.
Let me just press a pause button, because let's just look at the life and times through this story of Soumitra Chatterjee and just why he is one of the greatest actors we've seen in post-independence India. Take a look.
Soumitra Chatterjee was born well before independence and grew up in the suburbs of Kolkata's twin city of Howrah. A proud product of Howrah Zilla School, he never detached from his roots. Not for money, not with fame. He remained rooted to Bengal.
আমাদের স্কুলের 150 বছর যখন হয়েছিল তখনও আমাদের সেই সময়কার ছাত্র শিক্ষকরা গেছিলেন, তাদের সঙ্গেও তিনি আলাপচারিতা করে বলেছিলেন যে তিনি হাওড়া জেলা স্কুলের যে সম্পদ তিনি পেয়েছেন, যে বিদ্যার উত্তরাধিকার তিনি লাভ করেছেন, তা তার মানে স্মৃতির মণিকোঠায় অক্ষয় হয়েছিল।
A sportsman and a connoisseur of literature, Soumitra Chatterjee was a student at Calcutta University when the arc lights began to attract. At first, it was the stage, and then an assistant of Satyajit Ray spotted him and took him to meet the director, who was himself beginning his meteoric climb to legendary status. Satyajit Ray cast the novice Soumitra opposite another fresh find, Sharmila Chatterjee. 14 films with Satyajit Ray, and there was reason to be known as his alter ego. Charulata, Ghore Baire, Ganashotru, Oronnyer Din Ratri, benchmarks in Bengali cinema. But it wasn't just Ray. In his 6 decades on screen, Soumitra Chatterjee worked in iconic films with iconic directors spread across the Bengali cinema pantheon, cinema to commercial hits. Soum's second most popular lead hero after Uttam Kumar. From the complex love stories to period films, from outright romance to romantic comedy, the versatility of Soumitra was in great demand. From the mentally challenged to being the greatest detective in Indian cinema, Chatterjee was a director's delight. In the 6 decades that he spent at the pinnacle of the craft of cinema, Soumitra Chatterjee proved himself a man of many parts. He wrote both poem and prose, with some 20 publications to his name. He recited and was a sought-after draw at functions and literary events. He painted, and for some time, he even edited a magazine. As the thespian aged, he shifted to character roles that were still being written specially for him. It is the testimony of not only the mastery of his craft, but the love for the art form of cinema that Soumitra Chatterjee remained an actor till almost his last breath.
Outstanding actor of his generation. Let's go back to Sharmila Tagore. One of the interesting things, Ms. Tagore, is that unlike someone like you who moved to Hindi cinema from your early days in Bengali cinema, he seemed to be rooted very much. He was stuck in Bengali cinema, rooted to the soil of Bengal. That's where he seemed to derive his energy, the inspiration that you speak about. Would you agree with that, that he had no real ambition to join mainstream Hindi cinema?
I wouldn't say that he lacked the ambition. I mean, he understood the power of Hindi cinema, the way it cuts across, the reach of Hindi cinema. It's not that he was against it or anything. I mean, he loved Naseeruddin Shah. One of his favorite actors was Naseeruddin Shah. But he was, as you say, rooted in the soil of Bengal. Mm-hmm. He chose, as did Satyajit Ray, Kolkata as his city. And I suppose that was the issue of the language also, because, I think as an actor, the way you can perform in your own language, perhaps you can't in another language, maybe. But whatever it was Kolkata's game, it was Bengal's game. It was both the Bengal's game, again, because I think he is popular in both the Bengals. And today, both the Bengals are mourning him, the loss of this fantastic actor.
Aparna Sen, you acted with Soumitra. You also directed him, interestingly, in 15 Park Avenue. What was it like directing someone like Soumitra Chatterjee?
It was a little frightening, the thought at first, because when I was very young, I started when I was 14. I met him when I was 14 years old, and I used to call him Uncle, Soumitra Kaka. And, even though I stopped calling him that awe, that didn't quite go away. And, when I directed him, it was, there was not very much that I had to direct because he got it anyway. It was there in the script and he understood it immediately. But whenever I wanted something, I would go up to him and I would whisper in his ear. I would say, that was good, but, you did it your way. Now, will you try another way, my way? Will you just try it once? And he would say, but of course, you're the director. Why are you hesitating? Tell me. And then, I wanted a certain kind of a look with his hair falling in a wave on his forehead. And his hair then was, he didn't have that much hair to make that wave. And so we had to use a wig. And he didn't at first want to use a wig, neither did I, but since it couldn't be done. And then, he explained to the makeup person, he said, see, she's been saying this for a long time. She wants a certain kind of look. She's the director, the vision is hers. And you and I, makeup person and actor, must work together towards realizing her vision. I thought that was very understanding and astute and very befitting of an actor of his stature.
Was he, in that sense, a director's actor? Given the fact that he acted in all these over a dozen wonderful films with Satyajit Ray, was he just simply a natural actor who could effortlessly go into any role? What stood out for you as Soumitra Da as an actor?
I think more than anything else, his, what came out in any role that he did was certain nobility of bearing and nobility of expression. He has done other roles, like in Obhijan, he acted as a taxi driver, but he was a Chhatri, he was a Singhji nursing, and there was a certain nobility, there's a sort of a moral refinement about him that I think showed itself in most of the characters that he played. That was his natural expression. But of course, he could go away from that and, do other things, even contrary to his natural bearing. But I think that his natural bearing was such. Culturally and morally, he belonged to a generation that is fast disappearing.
In a sense, Sharmila Tagore, the Soumitra Chatterjee combination that starts in Apuor Sansar, it seems very special. Perhaps unlike what we've seen in Indian cinema, an actor and director who've acted over the years and produced such outstanding cinema together. I remember seeing Shonar Kela as a young boy, Feluda, entranced by the film. There seemed to be a special connection of a kind, as I said, that has perhaps never been seen in cinema in this country between Ray and Soumitra Chatterjee. Explain it to us.
Because I think Manika, of course, liked him, he groomed him, he mentored him, and Soumitra grew under his influence, and yet he had a mind of his own. He was his own person. I've seen him arguing with Manika. If he was not convinced about the character or the way he had to play it, he would, like in many instances, he's given his feedback, like I just said that about the matchstick. So he was not sort of under Manikda's thumb, so to speak. He also contributed to that relationship. And I think together they made a wonderful combination that gave so many wonderful films to us, to world cinema. Mm-hmm. So Soumitra grew under Manikda, but he also, as I said, worked elsewhere and also made a name for himself. And he was not just an actor. Yesterday, the kind of heartfelt send-off that Kolkata gave with music and tears and everything, mm-hmm. It came straight from the heart. And that's what Soumitra meant to all the Bengalis. And he was not just an actor or a theatre actor.
No,
he was a writer, he was a playwright, he was a poem. And his recitations, like today, all day I've been listening to his recitations, and one was better than the other. And I have also had the privilege of sharing a stage and reading with him, and the proximity of that, hearing his voice so close to mine was a wonderful experience.
Sharmila Tagore there is speaking about this outpouring of grief that we've seen in Kolkata. Bengalis cutting across generations, not just those who saw Soumitra in the 1960s, but also the 21st century Bengalis being part of the funeral procession. Was Soumitra Chatterjee, Aparna Sen, therefore someone who cut across generation, the Renaissance man who was able to also be seen as the greatest actor of all times for every generation, someone who today's generation would like to model themselves on?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he was being cast at the age of 85 when he could only work 4 hours a day. People were still casting him because his draw was such. And and at the same time, he was a man of a past era in the sense that, he didn't ever really think about material things, things like there was a genuine disregard in my father, in Ray, in Mrinal Sen, in Soumitra Chatterjee, disregard for branded stuff and, material things and luxury items. They really and genuinely, that wasn't there in him. And in fact, I scolded him. I used to scold him in the last film. I scolded him. I said, you are so unwell, and obviously you're doing it because you need the money, apart from the fact that you enjoy acting. But why don't you raise your rates? He said, I have, but I really can't anymore, and they can't afford it in Bengal. And he was a little embarrassed, to talk about money and so on and so forth. This is a very Bengali trait, Bengali intellectual trait. It may be considered naive, it may be considered foolish, but that's the way it is.
Interesting. Interesting the way you're putting it. Let me come to you, Sharmila Tagore, finally, because we live in the age of listicles, where people tend to list down their favorite actors of all time or their favorite co-stars. As someone who began her career with Soumitra Chatterjee, would he be there in your list of top 5 all-time actors that you've had the privilege to work with, if not at the very top?
Most certainly. Most certainly. I mean, look at the kind of films we've made. I mean, Apuor Sansar, the trilogy remains one of the first 100 films. Each year I think it's a Time magazine that does that. Each year it remains in the list. So it's so popular. And Devi, I think it's the best film, my career's best film. So, and Soumitra was part of that. So Aurane Din Ratri, which is like when I go to Washington or when I go to Paris and I see Aurane Din Ratri, Days and Nights of the Forest, with a packed, today's generation, and how much they enjoy. The moment Robi Ghosh comes on the screen, everybody laughs, and Soumitra's contribution to that. So we've worked in very, very significant films, and he's most certainly will be one of 5 in my list, yes.
Sharmila Tagore, Aparna Sen, it's been a privilege talking to both of you as you've shared your memories of one of the greatest actors that Indian cinema has ever seen. Soumitra Chatterjee was a legend in his lifetime, and he will remain immortal. Thank you both very much for joining us. Bengal's Renaissance man is gone. Bye for now.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.